The challenge, I think, for every system that's implantable, that's a brain-computer interface currently, is that craniotomy only provides access to a small region of brain, and that region of brain is only superficial cortex. So the veins, the arteries, but primarily the veins create an accessible pathway to not only superficial, but also to deep regions. But more importantly, to all regions of the brain. And I think that's what really I'm most excited about. Whole brain bidirectional data transfer. We're focusing initially on paralysis and then epilepsy, but ultimately we think all deep brain stimulation targets should be accessible by a neurointerventionist, and patients hopefully won't need craniotomies. So we're in the feasibility stage right now. We have implanted 4 patients in Australia. We're still focused on safety, but we have reported some early efficacy findings in JNIS in last October. And to briefly summarize what we're doing, we are recording shifts in frequency, so spectral shifts that occur when patients attempt to move arms and legs. We record local field potentials or electrocorticography, and we translate those shifts, which are related to volitional attempted movement of limbs, into outputs that become digitized. And we use that digitized output in a technology platform to control platforms like Google, like Microsoft, like Amazon, to enable patients who are paralyzed to regain control over those systems. And so as probably the best example, our first patient, who incredible person with ALS who was completely dependent on his wife. The first application he used of this system was to control a mouse cursor on a screen in conjunction with eye tracking, and he got control over WhatsApp back, which he didn't have before. So it's the ability to give freedom back to patients who suffer from paralysis, who had lost the ability to control platforms that we now take for granted that enable us to live our lives independently. In terms of which specialists will do the procedure, we look towards the way that the cardiologists emerged in the electrophysiology field. We think that neurointerventionists can perform the procedure entirely on their own. Neurologists don't have a huge amount of experience with pocket creation. But we do believe that there is precedence within medicine that we don't need multiple physicians coming in to perform the procedure. So we're excited that as long as you're neurointerventional trained, whether it's radiology, neurology, neurosurgery, we are building a technology and a procedure which is for the neurointerventionist. The COMMAND trial is our US early feasibility study for the Stentrode, what we're calling motor neuroprosthesis, which is, as far as FDA is concerned, a corollary or the same thing as an implantable brain-computer interface for paralysis. So we're in the feasibility stage. The goal of what we're doing is to get to a pivotal trial, because we need to class 3 implantable. We need a PMA approval from FDA. To get to a PMA approval study, we need to go through a feasibility stage. The FDA has mandated that to every company. So we are in the feasibility stage. I think we believe we're the only company in the early feasibility clinical stage in the US with an implantable BCI. And we are collecting data on safety and efficacy that will enable us to shape the pivotal trial to come in the next couple of years to then head towards approval and get the technology out into the market. What we're hoping to show from the feasibility study is really 2 things. The first is safety. So this is a stent that has a lead attached to it that sits in the superior sagittal sinus that comes out through the jugular vein. So thrombosis, stroke, these are the things that we're looking out for from a safety point of view. We haven't had any of those events. The patients are on dual antiplatelet therapy. We have monitoring over a period of time. FDA have wanted us to watch patients for up to 12 months. So on the safety side, we're first and foremost demonstrating that it is safe to leave a stent electrode array inside a venous system in the brain. Then on the efficacy side, the question is, how do you quantify the utility of a brain-computer interface or of a motor neuroprosthesis? And it's one thing to that metric has not been demonstrated before, has not existed before. So I think the biggest challenge of the feasibility study is to identify the performance metric to quantify the effectiveness of the motor neuroprosthesis in the study to come. So with regard to safety, we've discussed the thrombosis. Probably the other interesting element for neurointerventionists is there is a precedent for access to superficial cortical veins. We see that in treatment for arteriovenous malformations, but also in treatment for idiopathic intracranial hypertension. The use of transverse sinus stenting has been an interesting precedent. And in the literature, there were a couple of events of subdural hemorrhage, presumably from wire perforation. And so the safety around the procedure itself is very important. And we are carefully looking at what is the best way to access the dura. What wires do we use? What wires do we not use? When do the risks with the procedure emerge? And we believe that they emerge when the wires leave the dura intercortical veins, and there is some type of injury. We haven't had any events like that, but we have drawn upon the past knowledge gained from those two areas to understand what the safety profile looks like. And on top of that, our patients are on dual antiplatelets and they're receiving anticoagulation heparin for the procedure. So for the procedure itself, it's triple therapy with a access technique which is novel. What I've come to think about recently is the most exciting aspect of the emergence of neurointerventional electrophysiology is that we can access all regions of brain. And once the technology is small enough and safe enough, I see a future where the neurointerventionist is placing multiple devices inside the brain, whether for a short time or a long time, depending on the requirement. We have incredible amounts of information coming out of the brain that help us answer questions we haven't been able to help. Things like epilepsy and movement disorders, in maybe depression, maybe sleep. I think there is going to be a whole new world opened up of therapies that have only been in the domain of the craniotomy. And now we can bring that into a minimally invasive approach. And, I'm excited. I see a future of a neurointerventional electrophysiology room, much like with cardiology, not just a typical neurointervention suite, but an EP suite as well. And we're starting to help patients in ways that we didn't think were possible now.